Assalamu alaikum grade 8s. Today we are on page 171 of your textbook and we're getting on with different types of angles. Okay, yesterday remember we did all the different types of angles. We did acute angle, right angle, obtuse angle, straight angle, reflex angle and a revolution. So you need to be very familiar with those names, and when you see any angles you must be able to name them, right? Now today we're doing adjacent angles. Okay, so everybody knows that adjacent means next to. Okay, so if I'm sitting next to you, it means I'm adjacent to you, right? So adjacent angles are angles which share a common vertex and a common arm and lie on either side of the common arm. So what do we mean by that? Okay, look at this angles here. Can you see we have angle B2, right? And we've got angle B1, okay? The common vertex is which point? The vertex is where the angles are meeting. Where the arms are meeting is called the vertex. So this point here is called my vertex, right? So you can see they're saying they have a common vertex, first of all. Then they have a common arm and lie on either side of the common arm. So which is the common arm for this angle B1 and B2? It is BC. Can you see? They both these angles B1 and B2 have this BC as a common arm, right? And then they are lying on either side of the common arm. So you can see it's lying on that side and B2 is lying on this side. Can you see they're next to each other, next to the common arm? So then what do we call them? We call them adjacent angles. Okay, so that B1 and B2 become adjacent angles. They share a common vertex B and a common arm BC and lie on either side of BC, right? So that's what we call adjacent angles. So let's see what they're saying here. PQS, right? So you know how to read the angles. PQS. So which one is PQS? It's this whole angle here. Okay, not Q1 and Q2. The entire angle is PQS, right? So if we're measuring from here right to there, that is PQS. And PQR are not adjacent. So which one is PQR? Is PQR is Q1. So can you see they're comparing this whole angle to that angle there? Those are not called adjacent angles. Which ones would be the adjacent angles? Okay, if we look at it, here's our common vertex point. There's our common arm QR, and the ones next to the common arm Q1 and Q2 will become the adjacent angles. So we have to know the word adjacent angles, and you have to be able to read it on a diagram and know that this is adjacent angles, right? Then we have a second word that we need to learn, which is complementary angles. And what it's telling us is that complementary angles add up to how much? 90 degrees. Okay, so what it's telling us is, for example, if I have a diagram like this and I have, I'll just name it A, B, C, and this is a 90-degree angle here, but I've got B1 and B2, right? So let's look if B1 and B2 are adjacent. Can we see if it's adjacent or not? Look at the vertex point. The vertex is B, and if I name this D, that's my common arm BD. So yes, B1 and B2 are adjacent angles in this diagram, right? But what it's telling me about complementary angles is I'm going to say that B1 plus B2 is equals to 90 degrees. So these angles are, these two angles together, what do we call them? We call them complementary angles. Because if we add up B1 and B2, for example, if B1 was 40 and B2 was 50, then we would add them up together and we would get 90 degrees. So those are called complementary angles. Then we have the word supplementary angles. Supplementary angles now add up to how much? 180 degrees. So if we look at a line like this, right, and I draw an arm there, look at my vertex point. That's my vertex point, right? So I'm having a common arm there. I'm drawing two adjacent angles. I'm drawing one angle there and one angle there. I'm going to call it B1 and B2 again. Now if I write the statement, I'm going to say B1 plus B2 is equals to how much? No more 90 degrees. Remember we did angles on a straight line. Let me show you the picture. Can you see here? Angles on a straight line. Okay, so now all I've done is cut that angle into two, right? So, but still, B1 and B2 are going to be equals to 180 degrees. So what do I call B1 plus B2? B1 plus B2 are supplementary. So these two angles are supplementary. So if this angle here is 100 degrees, this one has to be 80 degrees. It's a rule of geometry that those two angles are going to be equals to 180 degrees. So then we have to know what is adjacent angles, complementary angles, and what do we mean when we say angles are supplementary. So if in the question they give you a question and they tell you the angles are complementary, they are telling you that the angles are adding up to 90 degrees, right? Or if they tell you that the angles are supplementary, it means they're telling you that the two angles they're talking about or three angles that they're talking about is equals to 180 degrees. So you have to learn that, right? Let's look at the example. The example says calculate the value of x. Now we have, when we see x's and numbers in geometry, right? You see, first of all, you're going to know your rule. But then we don't have numbers. They've been giving us x plus 20 and x. So they've given us two angles. But what did we learn about these two angles here, right? These two angles are what? They are complementary. And you can even see the 90 degree sign there. So if we add them all up together, you're going to get 90 degrees. So we have to write this as an equation. Remember how we did equations? So look how they write the statement down. X plus 20, x plus 20. So they took the first angle and then they added it with the second angle. And they're saying it's equals to 90 degrees. Now look at the reason, right? Adjacent complementary angles. You're allowed to abbreviate it like that. If in the beginning you find it difficult, then write the full words. But remember, I told you statement 1 mark and then reason 1 mark. So you can't just work it out and say in your mind what the answer is. You will lose a lot of marks too. In geometry, you have to write down why you are saying something. We have to prove it, right? So we write down that now we know about complementary angles. So that's why we're saying that this angle plus these two angles is equals to 90 degrees. Just like how I said here, 40 plus 50. Now I just have x plus 20 and x, right? Now remember, simple, we're just solving for x. So we've got 2x plus 20 is 90 degrees. Now we're keeping our variables all on the left hand side. Then we're going to take that 20 over there, right? And we're going to make it minus 20. And 90 minus the 20 is 70 degrees. Then what we're doing here is we're dividing both sides by 2 to cancel that 2 out. And we're getting our x as 35 degrees, okay?